Hello, this is Joel Lindstrom. The world pretty much stopped for the coronavirus. We are still going here at CRM Audio. I just got done with the MVP Summit, which was a virtual summit this year. Lots of interesting things covered during that. But this is a good time to stop and, well, you may have some extra time, being restaurants are closed, movie theaters are closed, just about everything is closed, it seems like. This is a good time to take a step back and to learn something. And what we have coming up really soon, within a month, is Wave 1 2020. Earlier today, Shawn Tabor and I had a webinar about what you need to know about Wave 1 2020. And I thought it'd be good to share here. I've also uploaded the deck so you can check out CRM Audio and the show notes here and get a copy of the PowerPoint presentation if you want to see more about what we covered during the webinar. But here it is. I hope you enjoy it. So what are we going to cover today? A lot of different things. This update is quite widespread and covers all the facets of Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform. So we're going to be talking about team member license enforcement. We're going to be talking about sales, customer service, marketing, field service, as well as Power Apps, Power Automate, maybe some virtual agent as well. So getting started, the first thing that we want people to know about is the Dynamics 365 team member license enforcement. So a little bit of background. What is a team member license? So team member licenses were originally introduced approximately 3 to 4 years ago. And the idea of a team member license was kind of an XRM license for people that didn't need sales or customer service, really light user that were either read-only or light use cases, reading a lot of data, creating some core data around contacts, activities, notes, and other things like that, as well as custom entities. It was really a great solution to be able to build apps that didn't have to be sales or customer service or field service. Then in 2018, they added the restriction that you couldn't create or edit accounts with them. But the problem is Microsoft has not traditionally enforced those limits. They didn't build any platform controls in there to prevent team members from doing more than they were allowed to do. And as a result, a lot of people intentionally or unintentionally found themselves in situations where they were outside of the limitations of the team member licenses. Also, as I mentioned, team member license limitations have changed as well, in that originally team members could create accounts, whereas in 2018 they said they can't. So Microsoft is starting to enforce team member licenses with the Wave 1 2020. And for existing customers that have purchased after 2018 or the beginning of 2018, they have until June, because the mechanism that I'm going to show you to enforce the team member licenses hasn't been here yet. So you have some time, but you don't have a lot of time. If you start new, if you buy team member licenses, they will have these limitations from day one. So I'm going to jump over into the application and let's take a look, first of all, at how you would turn on the update. And then next we'll look at how the team member licenses are going to be enforced. So in the Power Platform Admin Center, I should mention everybody's getting the update in the end of April. But if you want to get it before then, you can go turn it on today. So if I go to the Power Platform Admin Center and go to one of my environments, and don't worry, this isn't the environment that I'm going to be doing my demos from, but you see 2020 release Wave 1. You can go in there today and you can turn it on. So you can go in and hit update now in any of your environments. I would recommend not starting in your production environment, but start in a sandbox environment. A lot of our customers are setting up what they call canary environments, whereby they can have something that's outside of their normal change control process, not their normal dev, QA, UAT production environments, but one they use to test updates, and they'll copy their production environment to it, and then they will go and test the update in it. So this is what I would do. I go to an environment that isn't your production environment or one of your key sandboxes, but rather one that is used for update testing, and select the environment and hit update now. You're going to have to type the name of your environment as a safety check because they don't want you accidentally doing it and then realizing that you did something wrong. So you have to type the name of your environment and then hit confirm. That then will start installing the update, and then you'll see here the status of that, as well as they give you some interesting reading material about what's new, so you can get the release notes and other things like that. So, onto the team member licenses. So the mechanism that Microsoft is using to control the team member licenses is this thing called Sales Team Member. And what Sales Team Member is, it's a model-driven app, and team member licenses, this is the only model-driven app that people with team member licenses can use. There's actually one other one which we'll get to when we get to the customer service, but this is the main one. And what this does is it controls the number of custom entities that can be added to the app. And so you're not going to be able to have 35 custom entities. It's also tied in with the security role. There's a new sales team member security role, which is a limited role that has the basic permissions that team members have. Now, it doesn't have all the permissions that team members have. Keep in mind, team members can still read any record in the system and any entity. So you can add additional security roles to your team members so that they can do what they need to do within the license limitations. They have to have that role, though, because that role is the only role that can be granted access to this model-driven app. So what do we recommend that our customers do? First thing is install the update in an environment so you can start testing the team member app. Move your team member users to one of the two team member apps, the sales team member or the customer service team member, with the appropriate security role. You have to give them the sales team member role if they were using the sales team member app, and then give them another role that has the incremental permissions that they need beyond that. Add up to 15 custom entities to the app. You can add read permission to any entity in the application. You just need to make sure you stay within the license limitations of the team member license. If you find yourself in a situation where, based on the new restrictions and the license terms of team members, it doesn't give you enough coverage, or you also need Power Apps and Power Automate, which are not included in team members, I would strongly consider a Power Apps license, either the per user or per application license. And what that will give you is that gives you unrestricted number of custom entities. That gives you access to not only model-driven apps, not only the model-driven app, one specific one, but as many as you want. So you can create additional custom model-driven apps, which many of our customers have. So if you find yourself doing that, and if your users are only using 1 to 2 apps, the per app license is not a lot more expensive than the team member license. So I would recommend you consider that. Whereas if people do fit within the limitations of team member licenses, then go ahead and keep them on team members, but make sure you move them to the team member sales app. If you have any questions about that, we will be, and there's a question, can you have more than one team member app? No. You're limited with team members. You have 2 team member apps, sales team member and customer service team member. I'll get to the customer service team member when we get to the customer service section. If you have any other questions, please enter them in and we'll take them as we have time. So now let's get to the fun stuff about what's new, starting with Dynamics 365 Sales. There's a number of things with sales that have come a long way. There's simplified mobile experience, which we'll talk about a little bit, forecasting. We'll get to that as well. I want to start with the new opportunity Kanban view. So I'm going to switch now to the Sales Hub app, and the Sales Hub app is the primary sales model-driven app for Dynamics. So if I go to, say, opportunities or activities, I now have some new visualizations, one of them being the new Kanban view. So if you want to see your regular view, you hit Show As and say Read Only Grid. There's the grid that you know for opportunities. But what the Kanban view gives me is a nice way to look at this on a board and quickly update my opportunities, either by stage or by status. And so I can update the estimated revenue. I can update the estimated close date. I can drag and drop to different statuses. Now, you still are limited in only going one at a time. If I do that, then that pops up with it. Let me show you what it looks like if I change this to status, though. This is one area where, especially for people that deal with a lot of opportunities and want to quickly win or lose them, I've got this one open opportunity for renewal. If I win it, I can drag it over here, which then will pop up the opportunity close dialog. Or if I use the customizable quick close opportunity form, then it would show up as a quick form. And I would close that out. So that's the Kanban view. So the next thing is the opportunity products have a major update in this release. So traditionally since CRM 2013, we've had the editable grid that is not customizable. If you customize, it becomes non-editable. And if you deal with opportunity products a lot and you have a lot of products that you're adding to an opportunity, it can be very cumbersome to work with. We have a major update with the opportunity products in this release where we can add them in a shopping cart type view that will feel very familiar to people who shop online. So that's something that I find really exciting and something that's great to see some of this functionality that frankly hasn't been addressed or hasn't been updated for multiple releases that is very important to sales users. It's great to see some solid improvements to some of these areas. Next up, activity process is getting a lot better too. So Microsoft has been refining the unified interface since its release, and some of the hierarchy of the activity timeline, in my opinion, are much better in the unified interface than they were in classic UI. But still, it can be made better. It can be made more efficient. So to start with, I'm going to go to the activity view. And so the activity view has been made streamlined to make it more efficient for users. Number one, make it easier to find things. So we have a great new filter on here. When you have the full activity view, it's been difficult when you have a bunch of different types of activities. Now I can easily filter between the ones that I want, as well as filter by the date. So if I want to change this to be I was going to say faxes, but nobody does faxes except for lawyers and doctors' offices. But if I want to see meetings that are due in the next 2 weeks, I can very easily filter that. The other thing you're going to see increasingly are activities popping up as modal dialogues. So if you've ever sent an email in the web interface for Dynamics, you know it fills up the whole form. In other words, you start an email, and a lot of times what happens, especially salespeople, when they want to email somebody about a deal or something, they need to be referring to the account or the contact or other places, getting more information. And when you have the email form take the whole form, it really creates a problem, because if you need to come back to that, you either need to open up multiple browser windows. The great news is, and this was a preview starting in 2019, but it's now generally available with 2020 Wave 1, you have a really nice modal dialog here that kind of floats on top of the record, meaning I can still navigate around. I can actually go to a different record, and that stays there. similar to how you might work with Outlook email. And so I can still make it full screen if I want to, but I don't have to. And I still have all the great options: insert templates, insert sales literature, and you're going to see other types of activities open in this type of window. And then, as mentioned before, the activities also are one of the entities. And one thing before I go away from there, if you say, "Oh, I need to go get some lunch," and we come back to it, I can minimize it, and then I've got my draft emails down here that I can click on to open up and continue with. So let's go back to activities. I can visualize my activities now in two additional ways. Not only can I visualize it in the list view, you also can see it as the Kanban board, just like the opportunities. So when you have your opportunities, when you have your, for example, phone calls, and I made that phone call and I want to complete it, it's very simple to do that. So somebody has a list of phone calls they need to update, or a list of appointments that they need to, reschedule or whatever. They can do it easily that way. But I also can visualize this as a calendar view. And the calendar is something that's been asked for a lot. This was also a preview feature that's now a fully baked feature. I find this extremely useful for my team scenario. A lot of times we will get questions from a sales manager. Can I sync all my team's appointments to my Outlook calendar? And I will say no, because you won't be able to find yours. This is a great alternative to that, because if I've got my appointments in Outlook and I've got a view of my team's activities, tasks, you see the tasks show up on the top. If there were appointments scheduled for certain times, they would show up on the calendar. I can have that work and see a group calendar without having to add any kind of add-on. So I find that very useful. So you've got a lot of options there, a lot of choices that should be helpful to help you make more sense and be more productive with activities. So let's talk about the other big one, which is sales forecasting. And if you follow CM Tip of the Day, I had part one of a video about that. I'm going to do a brief overview of this. If you want to see more detail, go to CM Tip of the Day. I've got another one coming with more of the experience. But let's talk sales forecasting. Sales managers for years have asked me about quotas and managing quotas. And sure, we had goals, but goals were kind of kludgy. You had to set them up for a specific time period. They didn't repeat. And the interface for creating those goals was very, very, cumbersome to work with. So with sales forecasting, it's recognizing that just a list of opportunities isn't enough, because not every opportunity is going to close. Not every opportunity is the same priority. And so we want to be able to forecast an accurate forecast of what we can expect to close. So from a seller side, the seller wants to be able to understand what they're going to sell and what they're going to get paid for it. Managers want to know how they're doing, but their boss wants to see how things roll up, so they maybe can identify soft spots and make adjustments if necessary. So that's where the sales forecasting, I feel, which was a preview feature last year, but has gotten solid improvements in this release, is going to be something that sales managers especially are going to be really excited about. So let me close my draft email, and I'll come back to that later. I'm going to go to the settings. And this is one area. If you're using a custom model-driven app, you may want to consider, if you're using sales or you're using customer service, and moving to the hub. And the reason is, a lot of the settings that pertain to sales are going into the sales hub. A lot of settings that go in field service are in the field service hub. So it's not like the old days where you have one big application with all the settings in one place for every single first-party app. So I'm going to go to the app settings, and I wanted to look at specifically over here, forecast configuration. So what forecast configuration lets you do is configure one or more forecasts that covers a part of your business. It supports multiple forecast models and lets you have one of these two templates. Org chart forecast is a forecast based on the hierarchy of per employee to manager. And territory forecast uses the sales territory functionality and the hierarchical territories that were introduced last year. So I've created one that's an org chart forecast. And the org chart forecast, again, works based on the organization chart. And right now, opportunity is the only thing that is forecasted with this. First of all, it lets you choose a view. And there's a standard view called opportunity forecast view. But it lets you choose a view. You could choose a custom view if you want to. And that determines what opportunities are included in the forecast. And you also then choose what's the top of the hierarchy. So that would likely be the top manager in the hierarchy. So there again, if you had 3 different forecasts or 3 different groups, you could have 3 different forecast records. And one thing I love is it lets you preview what does that look like. So you can say, yep, this is the right hierarchy for me. And you can choose whether it's quarterly, monthly, or yearly. And then you can choose what number of periods you want. So that's how you can make a quarterly forecast that goes to a yearly forecast. And so you won't have to recreate your goals every quarter. Permissions, you can choose who sees the forecast. By default, it's only the people at the various levels, but you can say anybody with this specific security role can see the forecast. And the layout really creates a pivot table because you have a forecast status pick list or option set that's on the opportunity, whereby you can classify your opportunities. You select what option set you want. It could be a custom one as well, and then it will create a column in the forecast for each of those statuses. And then you can add additional filters. So if you have certain types of business that you want to exclude from this, you can. So that's basically how you do it. There's also the ability to upload quotas. One of these fields, you can also, though, define new fields. So I could define a static field whereby it doesn't even take data from the system, but rather lets me import from Excel. And that's on the last screen here. It will download a template that will give you the quota fields and the status and the static fields, so you can import that data in. So it even supports data that doesn't live inside the Common Data Service. So now we have that set up. Let's take a look at what the forecast looks like. So if I go to the forecast area, and you can add forecasts to custom model-driven apps as well by adding the forecast entity. I believe they have to be configured through the Sales Hub, but you can add them to it. So on the forecast, I've got my hierarchical forecast that lets me drill in and roll up and roll down. And one cool thing is, at any of these levels, I can adjust this. So you see here, we have the value, and then we've got a value in parentheses. So what this is at one level here, up at one of these levels, we adjusted the forecast, and so you can see that the best case, roll up is this, and this is what it's adjusted to. One other cool thing is I can, at any level, I can click on it, and down below I can see the underlying opportunities that make up this forecast. There we go. And the cool thing is, as well, they're editable from here. So what I think a sales manager is really going to love about this is it gives them ultimate flexibility to take not just a list of opportunities, but to adjust it. Oh, and by the way, the fields we can add to the forecast can be calculations too. So if you want your forecast not to be the full pipeline value, but to be a percentage of that, I can create a calculated field that takes this value times the percentage, or this value plus this value. So really a nice set of functionality around sales forecasting. Excuse me. So now let's go to the customer service side of things. So we love sales, but and just to mention some sales insights things, there's some nice enhancements coming in sales insights Conversation intelligence is really exciting. That's the ability to monitor phone calls and phone call recordings and do sentiment analysis on them. Very useful for sales call centers. And the sales mobile app, Microsoft is coming out with a dedicated sales mobile app. The full Dynamics mobile app is great, but it's too much for some salespeople. So this is something geared specifically for salespeople, such as capturing notes, such as preparing for meetings, seeing who you're meeting with, seeing a summary of your upcoming customer meetings. Really useful. And also conversation intelligence and AI features, so you can use it like a digital assistant, including voice support. And then product visualize. If you sell physical products, this is designed to allow you to put through a phone or a mobile device to visualize what the product looks like in an actual physical space. And the actual 3D models are stored within the Common Data Service. Where this is going is really exciting. The ability to add PDF and other attachments to specific points within there. So say I was selling industrial equipment or medical equipment or some other physical object. I could visualize it there and have PDFs with schematics. It also is going to work in offline mode, which is great because some of these manufacturing plants that salespeople go into may not have really great coverage for network. So let's talk customer service. Big changes you're going to see here are a lot of things that were still in classic UI, specifically administration around SLAs, routing rules, other things like that, and queues are now finding their way into the customer service hub and unified interface with the deprecation of the classic UI in October. That's important so we can still keep configuring our queues. Big one that jumps out to a lot of people is the configurable case resolution form. So let's jump over and look at that now. So I'm going to transition to the customer service hub. And like with the sales hub that I showed you before, a lot of the settings for customer service specifically are now in the customer service hub. And I'm sorry, I got the legacy customer service app. Let me switch over to the customer service hub. That's better. Okay. So now let's switch to the settings and service management. So a lot of the things that you're used to seeing in this classic settings area, such as queues, routing rules, automatic record creation, these have all been totally refreshed for unified interface and can be used from the unified interface. That's one thing I will say was a little bit confusing in the last 6 months when we had deployment customer service. We'd have to teach people, okay, now you got to go to classic settings. It's going to be great for them to be able to do that from where they are. So let's talk about configuring the case resolution form. So there are a couple of settings that let you choose what you want the case resolution to be like. One of them is the traditional set dialog that pops up. But if I want to have it be more like the opportunity case close and be able to actually configure it, one of those options is to have it be a quick form. So if I hit resolve case, I believe I have that setting turned on in here. You'll see now it pops up the case resolution form. And the beautiful thing is this is configurable. So what you may notice right now, if you do this today, you can't really add new fields to the case resolution entity. So it's somewhat limited, but that's going to be changing. So as we get closer to April and the release, I would expect that you should be able to see the ability to further customize the fields on the case resolution. So that's something people have asked for a long time. A lot of people are really excited about the ability to customize the case resolution form. And just mentioning one or two other ones like in here, the foundation that was built with field service with IoT is now going to cover is now going to cover customer service. So we'll have IoT alerts creating cases and case IoT-based customer service. A brief note about Omnichannel. If you haven't used Omnichannel yet, Omnichannel is Microsoft's premier omnichannel multi-sessioning browser-based interface for agent experiences. And so original release, the Omnichannel was somewhat limited in the number of channels. We had chat and we had email and phone. We're now adding SMS, Line, Twitter, WeChat, WhatsApp, a lot of different digital messaging. So it really can be a true omni-channel experience. So I recommend you check that out, especially if you have call centers and work with people on all these different channels. So now Shawn Tabor is going to give us some insight about what's coming for field service.
Thank you, Joel. Boy, there's a lot of stuff you just covered, and that was pretty awesome. Well, in the field service area, the real focus for 2020 release wave 1 is centering around enabling the technicians to do more, giving them the ability to enter time against their work orders, perform inspections, and also as an organization to get AI-based suggestions for IoT alerts and incident types. We'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. Plus, there's additional scheduling and optimization capabilities coming, as well as a continued investment in IoT. There's also something we're not really going to talk about in this session, but there's something to look out for, a deeper alignment with supply chain management, formerly known as F&O, Finance and Operations, for asset management between your ERP system and Dynamics 365 field service. So the first thing I want to talk about is integrated technician time tracking or time entry. With time entry, what you're really getting is we can now automate and auto-generate time entries for work orders and time off requests, or we can manually create them from the web or field service mobile. This is something that really has been a need in the industry for field service to be able to create time entries right there from your work order to link that time that you're spending and get actuals right against a work order. So this is going to give you better understanding of your technician time for utilization, reporting, charging, and also some integration scenarios. Now there is a special project, mobile project to light up time entry on mobile. We'll share that link in the notes for the webinar. This also utilizes booking statuses, booking timestamps, and timesheet frequencies. So you can automate this capability to enter time while your field service technicians are doing their work. So field service inspections. This is something that is a really cool new feature. And this allows you to create questionnaires or surveys with different formats for technicians to complete before, during, or after work hours. You can make sure that this is part of the process by incorporating this within your incident types so that it becomes a task, a service task on that work order. You can create your own unique experience for your inspection through a very nice designer experience. It will associate directly with a work order, so you have all that information bundled together. And you can complete this through the mobile app. So why would we use inspections? You might have a technician who needs to conduct a safety check before servicing a piece of equipment, or maybe you need to inspect some pressure levels or remaining liquid in a machine. So this allows you to formalize that, document it, and then notate that those steps have happened, rather than just checking off a task that's been done. This gives a little more capability in that process, as well as enabling the technician to use their mobile device to take pictures and upload information directly from the job site. And also, something else important, this works completely offline. So that's very handy, especially when you have those situations where you don't have internet connectivity, but you still need to perform that inspection. And this is coming in April 2020. You can see in all the pictures, we have a little banner on when you should be able to see this lit up in the application. Incident type AI-based suggestions. So what is this? So really what this is doing is it analyzes your completed work orders to make improvements in the accuracy of the incident types. This is coming in a public preview in April. So it's not ready for general audiences or general availability, but you'll be able to start seeing this in a public preview in April. This is really going to help to provide those suggestions on how you should structure your incident types based on that historical data. So, for example, you might have incident type structured in a way to where you're continually adding new tasks, or maybe you're changing the incident type once you get on the job site. This is going to look at that data and give you a real means to standardize service work, including the services to be performed and the parts required, and really improving the incident types to more accurately affect the real work that's being performed. It's going to give you a way to better plan that parts availability, technician scheduling, and really will give you better outcomes to first-time fix rates, for example. The resource scheduling dashboard. This is the first foray into publicly provided Power BI reporting for field service. That's part and parcel of the application, and not an add-on. What this is it gives you 3 dashboards within field service and resource scheduling optimization, and it's going to analyze resource utilization. And if you have resource scheduling optimization, it'll look at those RSO runs and the results. This is going to give you a better understanding of how resources are spending their time and how RSO is minimizing travel time and maximizing the utilization of your resources, which is key. This is built on Power BI, as I mentioned. It doesn't require any additional licensing at this time for Power BI. So if you're not currently set up for Power BI Premium, for example, you still have access to this dashboard and reports. It can be filtered, but right now it can't be configured or customized. That's an important thing to remember, only because Microsoft is trying to understand the needs of the customers in terms of this reporting. So they're going to be continually looking at your feedback to improve this report, and then at some point make it available for editing. And this is available right now. Enhanced work hours calendar. This one is one of my favorites. The old work hours calendar was really based on CRM 2011, very archaic and very old looking in comparison to the new sleek unified interface. So this is completely redesigned and simplified to define resources work hours, very much in a Outlook web access style, and it's the same basic functionality under the covers, but the UI has been completely refreshed, and the calendar control is now a PCF control. Next generation schedule board. This is going to be available in the April release for public preview. And this is a completely new version. The whole thing has been rebuilt, which is great. They've done some really cool things with the user experience and performance on the hourly view. It is a much faster experience going from the new schedule board and looking back at the old. The time it takes to create bookings along with the initial schedule board load time is considerably improved. The intraday scheduling experience is also simplified. The tiles, you might notice that the opacity has been improved to where it's not as a darker solid color. It's more of a transparent, you can see through it. And also it gives you some additional benefits in the legends. You can now easily identify visually when somebody is traveling, when it is a hard book as opposed to a soft book, or if it's a time off, or if it's a priority issue. So this is going to make it faster and easier for dispatchers to manage their scheduling and better ensure effective use of the valuable resources. So completely new version of the schedule board. Very, very cool. IoT alert measures and service history. This was in public preview last month and is coming to general availability in June. What you're going to be able to do here is if you have IoT devices being measured in your field service implementation now, you'll be able to view those metrics and then overlay that with service history. So you could really see you can see that telemetry data in a more contextual and actionable kind of format. You could really see where certain spikes have happened in your data as opposed to the service history as well. So that's going to be a very helpful tool, being able to read that history with the past work orders. Additionally, we talked already about the incident type AI-based suggestions, but basically what this is going to do is as the IoT device alerts are received, you're going to have more smart suggestions on those alerts. Remote assist. This is a really cool feature that not many people know about. It's more one of those, well, you need a HoloLens. Well, you don't anymore. In the last release, they enabled remote assist on mobile devices such as iOS and Android. So you could use it on your phone or your tablet. But what's coming in the upcoming release is you'll be able to capture that session history through call recordings, which is great for review by your technicians. You're going to be able to share those files between technicians to improve collaboration and start creating a library of those shared experiences. So when you have a junior technician that's maybe learning the ropes, they can see some real world scenarios from other technicians on how they've moved through that process through remote assist. And then in public preview in June, we're going to have the ability to capture the asset condition through spatial markup. So what does that mean? What it means is when you're in front of the device itself, you'll be able to mark up directly right onto your remote assist screen what's happening with that device, and you'll be able to have the spatial context to those updates. Really cool stuff. There's a lot more stuff coming from remote assist in the future, and it's really going to make a big difference both in your training as well as your execution of field service work. Okay, great, thank you. So the first thing we're going to show time entry. So you can see here I'm on a work order, and for my customer Onaka Transport Solutions, and I'm doing some preventive maintenance on looks like the Millennium Falcon here, but I need to put in some time on the work that I spent on that. So you can access time entries through the related tab. You can go down here to time entries. I've already launched that, so I'll go ahead and pop open that tab. So here I could either enter in a new time entry, and my time entry panel comes up here. I started that. Let's say I started that at 2 o'clock. And then today at 3 o'clock. And I can indicate the type of work. So is it work? Was I on break? Was I traveling? Is it overtime? Is it an absence or vacation? So it gives a lot of flexibility into what your time entry needs are. I could change my entry status. Is it a draft? Is it approved? Is it submitted? And then I can enter in the bookable resource, which is me. It already pulled in my work order because I'm doing that directly from my work order. Now, nice thing about this, I'm entering a manual time entry. But one of the great things, like we mentioned before, through booking statuses and those changes, they will automatically create work order time entries based on those status changes. So if I want to document when I'm traveling, if I change my booking status to traveling, it'll then be looking for the status change to in progress so that I can indicate the time I've traveled. This helps especially if there's a different rate that we're charging for travel, or if we're not charging at all for travel. Breaks that up into easy chunks, as well as it alleviates the need for the technician to create multiple time entries manually. They really just have to enter the time entries manually that are needed to fill out the remainder of their schedule. I can also indicate the booking here, and I can enter in comments. that would show on the timesheet. And then when I hit save and close, you can see there's my time entry right there. Very cool. The other thing I wanted to show is the reporting for the resource and utilization. Again, you can get to this by changing from service to resources. And there's a new section called Analytics for your reports. And you can set your date ranges. So this is the filtering that I spoke about earlier. You could filter by resource type, resource, or booking status. Now, since this is a fairly new report, I don't have a lot of data here, but you can see the types of data that you could access through the tiles, as well as some of the items here. You can see, like in my duration breakdown, in December, I had a 1,000, 2.8, and 2.5K in February. I could look at territory analysis, variance to estimated travel time, requirement duration versus allocated duration. So this can show if your requirement was off in its duration estimation as opposed to what the actual work that was done. Then I could look at my resource analysis here for my resource metrics, as well as the travel time to work time. So a lot of good stuff right here. And again, this is completely filterable, but not yet editable.
Well, so just briefly about marketing. So Dynamics 365 marketing is continuing to get significant investment from Microsoft, and is now a very complete marketing automation solution. One thing with the death of voice of the customer, we still need surveys, so we can now send Forms Pro surveys. One thing you'll note if you talk to people who do customer journeys in marketing is they build up a lot of great data, but then they want to do something with that data. And so we're finally getting the ability to export our marketing customer journey results to Excel, so then we can then use that data wherever we want to use it. A bunch of other things. I wanted to zero in on the contextual emails, though. If you look at a lot of customer journeys, there's a lot of repetitive types of templates where you might want it to be a little bit different based on certain things, such as actions like a purchase or something else. So we're now going to be able to have contextual emails that can contextually change based on specific actions within the system. So that's really exciting. So that's the dynamics. We covered the main pieces of dynamics. Of course, there's always more, but those are the main pieces. Let's talk now about the Power Platform, because Power Platform, it's the same platform. Common data service, apps, model-driven, and Canvas apps. So a lot of what we consider dynamics traditionally is now considered part of Power Platform and Power Apps. So first of all, with Power Apps, you'll see increasingly Canvas and model-driven apps coming together where they're not so much different things, but they will share the same front door. And what that means is, number one, there's a unified launcher coming that will be able to launch both my model-driven and my Canvas apps on mobile devices as well as Windows. So that's going to be a great first start. You're also going to start seeing things that are components inside of Canvas apps coming into model-driven apps with the start of responsive Canvas pages. You'll be able to have not just embedded apps, but actually Canvas pages in the workflow of your app. You'll start seeing model-driven components start appearing inside Canvas apps like model-driven forms, which the net result is going to be one app platform rather than two different types of apps. You'll still have things that can be, strictly Canvas apps, if you will, but the line is getting a lot blurrier. Selecting other environments in your tenant, so being able to have apps that span multiple CDS environments. The file field is huge. That was introduced as a preview for Canvas apps. But you're going to be able to have files stored within fields and stored in Azure Blob. So if you have a file needs to be submitted at a certain time during a process, currently if you just put it in a SharePoint document library, it doesn't really fill the process and you can't really verify that it's been uploaded. This is going to accept very large files. Modal dialog forms is something that we cover on CRM Tip of the Day, where you can have not just create forms, but you can have edit forms appear as a modal dialog, meaning you can then edit it without losing context to the parent. They heard feedback loud and clear that people don't like the save button on the bottom, so it's coming back to the top. And we're going to have the ability to have responsive Canvas apps by default generated from data sources. So you're going to be able to, right now, if you do that, you'll get a phone format app that's not responsive. You're going to get full responsive app from templates and from data source generated apps. And we're getting a standard theming engine, which again, very exciting. The themes really haven't been updated for unified interface, but they're going to not only support unified interface, but also in Power Apps and Canvas apps. And then we can't forget the Power Automate flows. We're having a lot of things happening here. You're seeing Flow and Power Automate show up in a lot of different places, be it Excel, OneDrive, SharePoint, Dynamics, all over the place. AI Builder is getting a significant boost with additional models around anomaly detection, receipt scanning, image moderation, keywords, things that will be very useful for AI scenarios that we want to do. One I want to mention is they're building in places like Teams. Everyday activities aren't going to require people to go into Power Automate and learn how to use Flow. They're going to add the ability to surface those simple everyday activities without somebody knowing they're using Power Automate, but behind the scenes, it's powered by Power Automate. And then UI Flows, I think, is the headline for Power Automate with this release, because UI Flows is the RPA, or robotic process automation capability that's been in preview for attended UI Flows, but it's basically the ability to record a macro for an application that doesn't have an API or doesn't support automation via a connector. You can record mouse clicks, keyboard use, data entry, think legacy, purchasing systems, green screen applications, as long as they're, I shouldn't say green screen, either Windows or web, one of those two categories. You can record, if you will, a macro of keyboard clicks, passing information, but then you can also pass information and trigger other steps to do attended and unattended RPA. And the unattended just this week became available in preview, and that's something that I think is going to be very powerful and can scale as well to things like Azure VMs and other things like that. So if you don't have an API for it, you can create UI flows to automate those processes as well. Do the things that a machine can do more efficiently and better than a human, and that your humans focus on the things they do well. So your call to action: install 2020 Wave 1 today and start testing it. Do it in a Canary environment with a copy of your environment. Do that today. Start testing. Get ready for it, because a month from now it's going to be here. Evaluate the new features. If you have team members, configure and test the team member apps, because again, if you keep them on team members, they're going to have to do that. Use one of those two apps. Otherwise, if you say that's not going to work, we have more custom entities, we need more capabilities as a team member, let's consider moving to a Power Apps license.